Hello there everyone, I'm Christina at CSLdesigns and today I'm going to show you how to make this fishtail effect macrame bracelet. So we achieved the intricate look of a fishtail braid in the pattern but made only from macrame. And if you want to learn how to make it, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to need. First of all, of course, we need our cord. So this is an s-Lon cord that I'm working with and I've just chosen this lovely teal colour. And then the beads that I'm using are these 2mm purple coloured metal spacer beads. So of course you can choose whatever beads you want to, or even leave the beads out if you prefer that. And then to finish off the ends, I'm going to be using these ribbon ends here that have these little loops in the middle so we can attach our findings, where I'm going to be using a lost dog claw clasp and extended chain and of course some jump rings. And also alongside my ribbon ends, I use this E6000 glue as well to make it nice and durable. And like usual, I'm going to leave the material list and links to anything in the description box down below, so have a look there. Otherwise, let's get all the materials ready and let's get started. So then we need to cut some lengths of our cord, and first of all I have two lengths here of about 1 meter and 60 centimeters each. And then I have another 16 lengths here of about 1 meter and 20 centimeters each. And then to get started, I took another short length of the cord, just about 20 centimeters or so, doesn't have to be too specific, and I attached it to my project macrame board here that I'll be working on using these T-pins. So I just tied a knot on either end of the cord, so I had something to put my T-pins through. And I'll leave links to both of these in the description box down below. But what I'm then going to use this cord for is to attach all the other lengths that we cut ready onto. So this is basically a starting point. So we have all the other cords ready and I'm just going to grab them one at a time. So I have one cord here and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to attach this. So towards one end, I'm going to put the end underneath the cord that's on the board. Just leave a short little tail to be able to hold on to. And then I'm going to take it back over the top of the cord on the board there and then back underneath straight away. And then make sure to pull it up through the loop of itself, so like that. And then we have it looping around, we're pulling it tight. You can see it loops around the cord. So we basically need to do this exact same thing one more time. So again, take the cord, go over the top, straight back underneath. So we're basically looping around, and then make sure to pull it up through that loop of itself. And then as I'm going to be tightening this, you can see we end up with a knot where the cord is then going to stay in place. And we can move it around on the cord. So what I like to do is tighten it here. And as I'm attaching my cords, I just push the one I just attached kind of to the side. So I have this work area to attach the rest of them. So now I attached all the cords here next to each other, as you can see, and that's basically created a row of knots. And I just want to mention, because obviously the cords are different lengths, so the order that I've attached them in is basically the outer cord on either side are the two long ones and the rest are the short ones. So that's the order you want to make sure to attach them, because these will get used up a bit more than the rest. But now we have them all in place, we are ready to start making some macrame. So then the first thing I just want to do is just create basically a bit of an end here before we get into the main pattern. So to do that, I'm just going to again start from my left side. It doesn't really matter if you start from the left or the right, but the furthest left cord here, I'm going to single that out, and then all the other cords are just coming straight down, but this furthest left cord I'm just going to single out, like I said, and bring it over all the others and bring it towards the right. So my left cord is going towards the right over the rest, which then means that is going to be the holding cord, and the rest are then just going to be working cords for now. So what I'm going to do is basically just create a couple of rows of knots here. You can see we basically already have one where we attach them all, but just to create a bit of an end on the piece so we can use our ribbon ends. And then I'm just going to then take one cord at a time. The very next one here underneath, the first one that's coming underneath, I'm going to make a double half hitch. So it's coming underneath, go over the top, back underneath, make sure it comes through the loop of itself. And then as I'm tightening this, I'm holding my holding cord in a direction underneath the first row and just up slightly, and this knot then gets tightened right underneath that first row. So this is just half hitch. What we need to do is repeat the same process like that. So it's a double half hitch. And then the cord that I just used here to make a knot with, I'm putting it out of the way so we don't get too tangled up. Then grab the very next cord. Make sure you always grab the very next one and not kind of cross them over. Repeat the same, make a double half hitch. And as we tighten that, make sure to tighten it right underneath the other row so we get them as close to each other as possible. Ideally no gap. Put it out of the way. Grab the very next one. And basically build up a row of knots here in this manner underneath the first one we attached them, using one cord at a time all the way along towards the left until we've used the very last one. So now I've finished that row. As you can see, I haven't got any more cords to make knots with now, and it's really kind of up to you as well how much spacing you want here, so how many rows you want to make. But regardless how many rows you want to make, we do need to get this original holding cord back where we took it from, because obviously we want to keep the pattern of how we set up the cord. So regardless, I do need to at least make one more row here. So I'm gonna just literally bring that holding cord back over the top in the opposite direction, and then we are going to do the exact same thing, except our hands have kind of swapped jobs now. So the holding cord is over the other ones, then grab the very first cord that's coming underneath, and then make a double half hitch, same way, and then tighten that to sit right below the previous one. You can see that is then the beginning of the next row. Tighten that, literally just grab the very next cord, put that first one out of the way, make a double half hitch, and then again just like before, using one cord at a time, then continue all the way to the other side. And then once we've done that, we already then have 3 rows underneath each other. So now I got 3 rows in place here. I'm going to leave it at that, and also I have that holding cord that we've been using back where I originally took it from. So that's in place. I got all my cords back in the order that I attached them. And also now, because I have a bit more work done, I can actually attach my piece here using the T-pins on the actual piece itself instead of using this cord and the knots. So what I personally like to do is take my T-pins and I put them in between the rows just to avoid damaging the cord too much. So it goes in between there, and I'm just going to continue doing that throughout whenever I need to. So now to start making the main part here. So what I'm just going to be doing is starting in the middle, just because I kind of like to work from the middle out. Have a bit better overview, I find. So what I've done is separate it out, basically the middle 6 cords. And this is going to be just a little bit different than the main pattern once we get into it, just purely because it's a starting point here. But it's still obviously kind of the same pattern that we're doing. We just need to start it out. So what I'm doing is the middle 2 cords, we obviously have a right and a left one. So I'm crossing the right one over the left one. It means the left one is coming underneath, which means that one is the working cord, and the one that's over, in this case the right one, is the holding cord. So I'm going to take the left cord that's now, technically once we cross them over, is now the right one. There's one that's coming underneath, and then make a double half hitch. So you can see the cord loops around the holding cord like that. And then I'm going to tighten this, and as I'm tightening it, I'm going to be holding this holding cord out towards the left side here at a slight angle. So not all the way out straight to the side and not all the way straight down either, but at an angle. And then tighten that. Now for now, I'm just going to make basically half of a double half hitch. So that's 1 half hitch, obviously. Again, that's just because we're starting out and we're doing this crossover section. Then I'm bringing the next short cord underneath, from the left there. And then now I'm doing a full double half hitch. So once and twice. And again, I'm just holding the holding cord out at that angle once I'm tightening the knots. So something like that. So this holding cord came from the right and it's over towards the left now. So I'm going to leave it towards the left. And we use these two cords as working cords. Now I'm going to go back to the right. And basically the remaining short cord that we haven't used yet are these four in the middle. I'm now going to bring over from the right towards the left and over these two working cords. And now we're going to do the same thing. So take the very first one, make a double half hitch. So once and twice, and again the next one, once and once more for a double. So there we go. And we now have basically these four cords in the middle that are the short ones have more or less swapped sides. So these two working cords are going towards the right and the two holding cords are going towards the left. And basically what we've done is we've created two small rows of knots underneath each other, or right up against each other there, going out at an angle towards the left side. So that's basically the crossover section. Now I'm just going to work with one side at a time, still all these same cords, except I'm going to bring in the outer loose one on each side that I also prepared. I'm just going to work on the left first because we're already kind of working in this direction. And I'm going to bring it underneath, just separate out these two holding cords. Bring it underneath the first holding cord. So this is now going to be a working cord, and we have to basically just extend the rows a little bit. So do a double half hitch with it. So once and twice, and then moving straight on with the same working cord, bring it underneath the next holding cord, and then we do a double half hitch there. And you'll be able to see we're basically extending those rows like I said. And now this long working cord has ended up in the middle, and obviously that's just for now, but the cords are going to keep kind of swapping places between each other as we go along with the pattern. So this is just the left side for now. I'm just going to put them out of the way and then move over to the right of this center section. That's going to come underneath the first holding cord. And then here, you could say it's the same principle. We're going to be extending the rows, but obviously the rows are technically going in the other direction. But that's just because of how we made the knots. But we are going to kind of create two rows here coming out from the other rows. And again, as I'm tightening these, I'm holding the holding cord at an angle out towards the side. So that's one. Bring it straight underneath the next holding cord. And then do a double half hitch. Again. And then we can just see that we basically, from doing these knots, have created two small rows right next to each other there. Just going to put these to the side. And then this is basically the crossover section in the very middle as we've started out. So if we just look close at this crossover point here, what we've ended up with is we're going to continue having crossover points throughout. So the aim kind of with these crossover points is to make sure we do them in the right direction depending where we're doing them. So this one here, if you're looking, the rows of knots that were created, it makes it appear that the crossover is from right to left is on top and from left to right is below. So basically the crossover is like this, whereas in other places it'll be opposite. So that's depending how we choose to make the knots that determines that. So in this case here, it's as if the right length is coming over the left one. But this is the middle one for now, so I'm just going to put these lengths out of the way. Again, just using the T-pin there. And then I'm going to actually move to these outer cords. I'm just going to move to the right side. And basically we need to repeat and do the same thing. So then first I'm just going to separate my cords out again. Basically just like we did with that middle one, just to make it a little bit easier to work with. So the outer one on either side here of the 6 cords we've separated out, I'm going to put all the way up to the sides for now. And then we're going to start just focusing on the 4 very middle ones here. And for now we're just going to repeat the exact same thing that we did in the middle. So out of these 4, I'm grabbing the very 2 middle cords there. And we need to start the crossover point. And in this case here, I'm doing it in the same direction where we want it to appear that the right is coming over the left one. So the same crossover connection point as we just did in the middle. So we're just going to do that in the exact same way. That means out of the 2 middle ones, the right one goes over the left one. And then we just want to do, in this case here, because it's just starting out, remember there we just did a single half hitch first. Then the next cord out here, we do a full double half hitch. Like that. And that's basically started out the row. Now grabbing the next cord towards the right, because we want to create the 2 rows right up against each other just like we did there. I need to bring that over the 2 working cords we're just using to create the next row right underneath. And first of all, a double half hitch. And the next cord is coming underneath, also a double half hitch. So we now created the rows there right next to each other. That's going to appear as it's going from right to left. And then continuing this straight away, I'm just going to grab the furthest left cord here out of these 6 that we're working with and bring it underneath the first holding cord first of all, because now we just need to extend the rows just like we did in the middle there. So a double half hitch around this holding cord and then bring it underneath the next holding cord to extend that row as well, also with a double half hitch. Just like that. And you can see we then have that same effect of the rows appearing like they're coming from right to left on both of them. So these 2 holding cords that we just used, I'm just going to put them out of the way towards the left, and also that working cord that we just used, because then I'm going to go to the 3 right cords here, so the very furthest right ones, and we still haven't used the very outer one. We obviously just need to extend these rows as well, just like we did in the middle, which are the ones that then appear like they're coming underneath from left to right. So to do that, and because this is also the outer edge, we also need to take that into account, which means the outer cord is going to be the working cord. I'm going to bring that underneath the first, or out of these 3, it's the middle one really. So bring it underneath, and then we want to make a double half hitch to start the row off. So a double half hitch, bring it underneath the next cord, and then here we want to do a double half hitch, but within the knot we want to make a turn. So that means I do the first half of the double half hitch, tighten that, and again we're tightening them coming out at an angle to the side, and then instead of doing the other half like this, I'm going to swap over, bring the working cord underneath the holding cord, and basically swap hands and then do the other half of the half hitch, the double half hitch rather, with opposite ends. And then tighten that like that, and then go back underneath the outer cord and do a full double half hitch. And the second half like that, and basically what this does is it creates kind of a turn in the rows. So instead of them wanting to come out towards the right side here, they're now naturally wanting actually to come back towards the other side because we added that turn in. And that's basically what we're going to be doing on the outer edges to kind of create obviously a nice edge on both sides as well. Now we have one place left where we need to do a crossover point. So again, I'm just going to take the cords that I've just been using towards the right side out of the way. And again, I can use my T-pins. And then we just want to separate out the cords that we need to use now. So all the cords that we use for the middle section, again, separate them out and just get them out of the way. So I'm just going to put them to the opposite side now, because then I can focus on just working with these cords here. Now we want to start out separating the cords in the same way. So you can just separate out the outer ones first of all, to each their own side. And then the 4 middle ones here, we want to start using the 2 middle ones of them to start off that crossover point. Now the difference is here on this side is that we want the crossover point to look like it's coming opposite. So here in the middle we made the right look like it came over the left, and the same on the right side there. Now here on the left side we want it to appear that the left side is what's coming over the right. So to make that appear that way, the very 2 middle cords, we're going to start with them the same way as before, but instead of crossing the right one over the left one, because that's what creates this crossover point, we need to do the opposite. So we need to cross the left one here over the right one, which then means that the right one is coming underneath, and that's the working cord, and the left one here is going to be the holding cord. So it's where we hold the holding cord basically that determines where our rows of knots are going to go. So as you can see, that's over the top, which means it's going to appear that it's coming from left over towards the right. So let's just get started. So we need to first of all, because this is a starting point, just make a single half hitch to get it started. And then to continue the row, grab the next cord underneath there and do a full double half hitch to extend the row a bit further. Making sure I'm holding my holding cord taut as I'm tightening the knots. So you can already see this is going to appear because we're making this row of knots coming from the left towards the right instead of these are coming from the right towards the left. Now grabbing the next cord out, so the second furthest out to the side on the left here, bringing it over the 2 working cords to create the row that's going to sit right up against the one we just did. Do a full double half hitch, and the next cord, full double half hitch to extend the row. Here we go. You can see we now have it in place so it appears that it's crossing over there in the opposite direction to the other 2 crossover points. Now of course we have to just continue these rows, so I take the very outer cord to the right of these 6 cords we separated out and bring it underneath the first holding cord, do a double half hitch again to extend the row, like that, underneath the next one. Extend this row. And then these 3 cards that I've just been working with, just put them out towards the right. And if you remember from the other side, because we're on the outer edge, we need to do that curve on the very outer edge, which on this case here, on the left side is obviously these cards on the left. So that means the very outer card, I'm going to take underneath the next one to then kind of extend those rows or create the rows that looks like they're coming underneath. So first of all, I'm going to do a full double half hitch once and twice, then bring it underneath the next holding cord. Let's get these other ones out of the way. And this is where we want to add in the curve within the knot or the turn, whatever you want to call it. So we start out with the double half hitch, make the first half like that. Now straight away bring the working cord underneath the holding cord and swap hands to make the other half in the opposite direction, and then tighten that, bring it underneath the outer holding cord and complete with making another double half hitch like that. And that is how we've now added in a curve on this outer edge, just like we did on the other side as well. So we've now done our 3 crossover points here, and this is our starting position, you could say. So I can just bring all my cards back in. You can get a bit of a better look. So that middle one, it crosses from right to left, and the same with the right one, and the left one is crossing opposite. So the pattern is basically going to consist of these crossover sections over and over again, but what's going to create the pattern is how we make them appear to cross over, so what side crosses over what. Because obviously we want to achieve that fishtail effect. So that means that the only one that's going to change throughout the pattern is the very middle one. Because obviously in this case here, we have the right crossing over the left, but the next time we do a middle one, it's going to be left over right, and then opposite all the way across. But on the left side, we're going to have them all crossing from left to right, and on the right side, we're going to have them all crossing from right to left. So let's focus on the next ones we have to do. Now obviously, you can also kind of follow where the cords are to see where we are in the pattern. And right now we have the 3 crossover sections, and they all kind of end there. You can see between the sections, just an example, these here, these holding cords from sections next to each other are naturally now wanting to cross, but in between the previous 2 sections, obviously in the next kind of level down. So these are the crossover sections we need to do now. Basically, you could say in between the previous ones, but on the next level down. So you can just separate the cords out. Again, getting all the long cords here so we don't get tangled up. So I'm just putting the ones out to the side that I'm not going to use at the moment. Remember, we can use the pins for that as well. Now I'm left with these cords, you could say, in the middle, but I will just be working on one side at a time. And I'm only going to be working with the holding cords between. So these 2 cords here in the very middle that were working cords, I'm not going to use them just currently. So they can go to the right with the other ones. And I'm just going to start on the left side here. So we're going to be doing 2 crossover sections on this level. And I'm going to use these 4 cords on the left. So 2 from the previous furthest left section, and then that middle section that are naturally wanting to cross over each other. So because we're on the left side of the middle, that's where we then need to make it appear that the left is crossing over the right. And you can see previously as well, this section, that's also what we did there, because that's also on the left side here. So we basically just want to continue these rows now. So I'm going to take the inner card from either side, either previous section there, and then I'm going to take the right one of these two and bring it underneath the other one. So of these two middle cards that are the four that we're working with, the left one is crossing over the right one, and then we just need to do a double half hitch like that and tighten it. Do the other half and tighten that, and use the next card to basically extend the row that we've made previously. A double half hitch again, just like that, and then of course to do the other row as well, just up against it, bring these two working cords underneath the next holding cord, do a double half hitch with each of them, and then we've extended the rows, and you then also can tell we've made this next crossover point, and we made it look like the left is crossing over the right, which is obviously going to help with that fishtail effect. Now don't forget to extend these rows on both sides. We need to just bring in the next cord over. So we've already made the crossover point now, and then what we just got to do is basically get the cords into position to do the next crossover point after that on this side here, and we just need to create that little bit of spacing. So I'm taking the very next cord further out, bringing it underneath the first one here of the two holding cords, and then do a double half hitch again to extend the row, and this is an extending the row that's coming from the right here, looking like it's crossing underneath the other ones, like that, underneath the next one, to do the same thing to extend that row, and really then obviously help emphasize the fact that the crossover point we just made looks like the left is coming over the right. So there we go. Same with cords on the other side, just pick out the cord we need to use as the working cord, and then bring it underneath the first one. Just like that. To again extend the rows that we can see already from that crossover point. Bring it underneath the next one, and another double half hitch. So you can see we're just gradually extending the rows bit by bit, and then doing a crossover sections in a certain way to make it appear that it's kind of braided into that fishtail effect. And then we have these two working cords we just used facing each other, and we've done a complete crossover point right here on this level. And then of course we need to move to the other side and do that one as well. So first of all, I'm picking out the 4 cords that I'll be using for the actual crossover point there, or connection point, whatever you want to call it. So these 4 here, 2 from that middle section and 2 from the right section, ones that are naturally wanting to cross over each other. So obviously we just need to do it in the right order, which means here I'm on the right side, so that means I need the right sections here to appear like they're crossing over the left ones, which means they need to be the holding cords. So I'm taking the very first one over the 2 working cords here that are coming from the left, and I'm taking the first one of those and doing a double half hitch to first of all kind of establish and create that connection. And then obviously extend the rows as well. So that's the first one. The next one, also do a double half hitch. Like that. Grab the other holding cord, bring underneath the first one. Sorry, the opposite way. A little bit in habit there from the other side. So of course the holding cord from the right hand needs to go over, so we can extend that row. And the next one, so we actually have the crossover point, connection point in place. And then of course to get it into the same place as the other side, we need to just extend the rows a bit. So pick out the very next cord to the ones that we're working with and use that as a working cord to extend these rows. Again, just by doing double half hitches. Underneath the next one. So that's the inner ones. Put them out of the way, and we just need to move back to the other side and also extend these. So pick out the cord we need to use to the very next one, and then bring that underneath the next cord there. So these rows are going to appear like they're coming underneath the other ones and going out towards the right side. So a double half hitch, the first one, and then underneath the next one, and do another double half hitch. Just like that. And from doing that, we are now in the same position as the crossover point we made on the other side, as you can tell. And it's basically at this point now we're kind of starting the repeating pattern. So first we made the 3 connection points on that level. The next level down here that we just did, that's 2, that kind of in between the previous 3. So the next level down now that we're going to do, we need to do 3 again, just like on the first section, which means we obviously just need to separate out our cords. So what I'm going to do is start with the middle one. I want to start with that connection point. So I'm just separating all the other cords out of the way. So I'm left with my middle. Where we're gone there. Just need to grab the right one on this side as well. So I'm left with my middle 6 cords. But I'm going to start out with the very middle 4 and just have the outer 6th one on either side handy and ready when I need it. And now this is then just the point where we have to pay attention the most, because like I said before, it's the middle section that is going to keep alternating. So on the very first one we made the right one appear to go over the left one, which means in this case we need to do the opposite. So we need these rows here that are coming from the left appear to go over the ones that are coming from the right. So that means we need to basically have these cords, the left ones cross over the right ones, and that's the effect that we want to end up with, the opposite to the previous one right above. Which means when starting with the inner 2 cords, I'm going to then cross the left one over the right one, because the left one is going to be the holding cord, and then do a double half hitch with the right one, tighten it there in the middle, so we're fastening him but also obviously making that connection point. Now take the very next cord, continue the row, you'll be able to see that it has that appearance then of being the one that crosses over. Of course, the other holding cord needs to be used as well. So we continue that row that's right underneath. Extending this one as well, doing a double half hitch with each of the working cords. And the next one. And there you can see this middle crossover point now crosses over opposite to the first one. And of course, don't forget, while I'm here, I might as well just extend the rows as well so they're ready for the next section, which means doesn't matter what side you start with, but I'm going to take the 2 cords that I just used to make the connection point, and then also the very next one out, and use that new one, bring it underneath the first one of the holding cords, and just extend the rows there and make a 1 double half hitch and bring it underneath the next one and making another double half hitch. Like that. So that side is extended. Same with the other side. Pick out the cord that we need to use, which is actually this one here. So again, just separating that out, getting the other ones out of the way. Don't want to get tangled up. Bring it underneath the first one first of all. And here you can see that's then the rows that look like they're going over that we're now going to extend by simply doing a double half hitch with the first one. And then underneath the next one and do a double half hitch with the next one. And there we go. Now both sides have been extended. And we've ended up basically the 2 working cords that we used to extend in the middle and then actually went to crossover. But that's the point we're at now for this middle section. So you can kind of start to see the effect that we're getting there. So that fishtail effect of having one side come over into the middle, then the other side all the way over into the middle, the opposite side all the way over into the middle, and so on, alternating from side to side. As you can see, the rows there basically going over all the way until it reaches the midpoint. But now we did that midpoint in this, on this level, you could say. We need to obviously do the sides as well, have them catch up. So I'm just going to move to my left side here. It doesn't matter what side you go to, because obviously we're going to do them anyway. So I'm just going to go to the left and work on the furthest left section and get that down to the same level as the middle one. So basically, if you imagine here on the left side, this outer section, you could say, that's going to create these 2 rows next to each other. That's the curved ones on the side there. It's going to appear to continue, and they're going to go over, over, and then into the middle. So they're going to basically be that next strand in the braid on this side. And if you remember, we made that curve on the outer edge. We obviously need to remember that this is the edge, and in order to get these cords into reach to be able to make that next crossover point, we do need to just continue that curve a little bit because it's not all the way in position yet. So basically we need to repeat the same thing that we already did to create that, you could say, first half of the curve. So right now the cords are kind of more pointing straight downwards. Originally they were pointing out to the side, they're now more pointing straight downwards. We need them to kind of point more towards the opposite side. So I'm just going to repeat the same principle as before when I made that curve. The very outer cord is the working cord. That was also the working cord previously on that curve. I'm going to first of all bring that underneath the next cord. and then tighten that. Do another one, so we have a full half hitch here on the outer one, full double half hitch, sorry, and bring it underneath the next holding cord. And now we want to make the first half of the double half hitch like that, like we did before, and then straight away we bring the cord back underneath the same holding cord and make the other half, but with opposite hands, so basically in the opposite direction, and tighten that. Again, that's the inner of the two holding cords, and then bring it underneath the outer one again, and now do a full double half hitch, regular one. And as you maybe can tell, this is now kind of extended the curve further, so it's coming around and actually now fitting nicely and meeting up with where these, just get them, other rows end up as well. So they're now naturally wanting to cross over each other there, you can tell, because we've now moved that curve further around. So that's how we make these kind of nice outer curves. And now we have it in place that we can make the connection point. We just need to do that. So again, just going to pick out my cords that I'm going to use. So for the connection point there, I'm going to use these 4 cords that are naturally wanting to cross over each other. So remember, we're on the left side, so we want the left one here to appear that it's going to go over the right one, which means the left ones are going to be the holding cords. So I'm going to take the very first one, again like all the other times, we're starting with the inner 2, crossing the left one over the right one, and then with that right one that's coming underneath the left one, do a full double half hitch, and then grab the next working cord that's coming underneath there, and again another full double half hitch. And of course, to make the other row catch up with it, bring the next holding cord over and do a double half hitch with each of the working cords, making sure to hold that holding cord in the direction that we want the rows to go. And then you can really see as well the effect that that curve gives on the outer edge. A double half hitch with the other one as well. There we go. So we now have that connection point between these 2 rows on this outer left side. Now we can just extend, obviously, the rows as well, just like we did in the middle while we're here anyway. So I'm going to take, just doing the right one of this section, the kind of next cord out I'm going to bring underneath, because we're extending the rows going kind of in this direction. And obviously as we're building a bit more and more here, you can really start to see that effect of the fishtail braid. The next one, so we're making sure we obviously do both rows each time. And there we go. So now these 2 sections, so the one we just did and the middle one, are ready there for the next crossover point on the next level down. But obviously that's not for right now. So if you noticed, I just extended the rows here on the right side of this section we just did. Now you can go to the left and extend that one as well. That's where we do the curve on the outside. I'm just going to leave it for now because I'm going to go to the other side and just do that first. But you could do that now. It's completely up to you really, and what kind of rhythm that you end up getting as you're working with it. So like I said, it's up to you if you want to do it now or you want to leave it. I'm just going to leave it to try and kind of not have too much going on and have it a bit in connection to then the next level. So obviously this connection point we just did, we also need to do on the other side. So I'm going to move over to that side. Just release my cords here so I can separate them out, because obviously here, like on this side on the left side we needed to just continue that curve. We also need to do that on this side, so that's why you can extend that side now as well if you want to, all the way if you want to, or you can wait instead of kind of splitting it into two. That's completely up to you. But as you can tell, we need to extend this curve on this right side before we can make that next connection point. So that means I'm just going to repeat what I already did on the first half of the curve. Just get my cords untangled here. And also what we did on the other side, but obviously just mirrored. So I'm bringing the very outer cord, that's the working cord, underneath the next one. Then I'm going to do a full double half hitch. Tighten that to the other half. Tighten that. Now bring this working cord underneath the next holding cord. So that's the inner one of the two holding cords. Start off the double half hitch. Tighten that, and then straight away before we do the other half, bring it underneath, back to the opposite direction, and do the other half in the opposite direction. And there we go. Back underneath the next one out to just complete with one more full double half hitch. And then we'll be able to tell that we've extended that curve enough so that we can then use these two holding cords and the two holding cords from the next section in, and they will naturally have the angles and the direction to now want to become the next crossover point. And then remember, because we're now on the right side of the middle, we need to make sure that the right rows look like they're coming over the left ones, which means that they will be the holding cords. So grab the very first one, and it goes over the other two cords there. So they're going to be the working cords. Grab the first one, do a full double half hitch, tighten that, and then move on to the next cord, another full double half hitch, like that. Bring the next holding cord over them so we can do a full double half hitch with the first one and the second one. Just like that. And again, we've done the crossover point. We can now extend them. Again, the outer ones here, I'm just going to leave for now because that's all we're going to do another curve. But I might as well extend the inner ones. So that means the two holding cords there, and then the very next cord after that is going to be the working cord, and we just want to extend the rows with one double half hitch on each of them. Again, holding that holding cord in the same direction the rows are already going in to now basically become straight. Working cord goes underneath the next holding cord, and another double half hitch. And there we go. And there you can see these two holding cords from each section next to each other, and now again naturally wanting to cross over. So since we're here, I might as well do these crossover points now. So just getting my cords ready. I'm going to use Same principle as all the other times. The 2 cords from each of the sections next to each other there that I naturally wanted to cross over. And again, just remembering, I'm still, in this case here, on the right side of the middle, which means I need to bring the right cords over the left ones to be the holding cords. And otherwise, just make the crossover point in the same way with the usual double half hitches. The first one and the next one. Bring the next holding cord over them and repeat. One and two. There we go. And of course, can't forget, while we're here, we might as well extend them. So grab that very next cord to the current ones that we're working with. Just get that untangled from the other cords, and then use that as a working cord. Bring it underneath the first one first of all. To extend that row. Like that, and then underneath the second one. And extending that equally. And tighten that. So that's that left side, and then equally to extend the right one as well. So grabbing the 2 holding cords, and then the very next one out. Remember, we then have 3 left all the way out that we're not using at the moment. And just extend the rows that look like they're coming underneath. A double half hitch around the first one, underneath the next one, to do a double half hitch under that, or around that rather. And there we go. Now this crossover point is done and ready for the next section. And you can see from that middle point that we're getting all these rows coming from the side, the outer edge on the right side, going over until they reach the middle. So let's move straight on to the left section. Just separating out the cords that we need to use. So I have the 4 cords here coming from these previous 2 crossover sections that are naturally wanting to cross over each other there. And of course, because we're now on the left side of the middle, I need to make sure that my holding cords are the ones from the left. So take the first one first of all, over the other 2, to then do the double half hitches and create that connection point. And the next one. Like that. And of course, don't forget to bring over the other holding cord to repeat the same thing. Full double half hitch and another. There we go. so that's the connection point, and to extend to then get them into the same position as the connection point we just did on the right side. While I have these cords, I might as well just extend them first. So I'll take the kind of remaining inner cord there, that's right next to them, bring that underneath to extend these rows just enough so they will meet up with the ones from that previous section on the right that we did before. For the next crossover point in the middle, once we get to that, double half hitch and another double half hitch. There we go. So that's that side. Just extend the rows on the other side as well, picking out the correct cords, leaving out the outermost 3 cords, and then grabbing the next 3. The outer one being the one I bring underneath to make my double half hitches with to extend the rows. And again, these rows that I'm now extending look like they're coming underneath from that previous crossover point. And another double half hitch. And there we go. So we can now see that, like I said, we're in position so we can make the next crossover point in the middle, but we kind of just need the sides here to catch up first. So that is what I like to do now. So again, just going to start on one side at a time, doesn't matter what side you start with. I'm just going to go to the left first, and then you can just continue making the pattern. Or if you want to add beads in, this is also where I like to do that. So just separate out my cords first of all, and then I like to add beads on the outer edge. So I'm going to start doing that now, which means when I'm doing the curves here on the outer edge, focusing on them, that's when I know I need to add beads in. So I've picked out that very outer cord here, and before I start to use it, I've gone to the very end, and then I'm adding on my tiny little bead, and then letting that go all the way down to sit, as you can see, where I won't go any further. So basically I'm just going to add beads to the cords before I start making the macrame, and then in knots, so they're going to get trapped in place into those kind of little corners that these curves create. So that's just my personal preference. So if you want to add beads, remember to add a bead to the outer cord before I now need to start using it and make some knots. So we need to make that curve, remember that. So I'm going to bring that outer cord with the bead on underneath the next one in, do a full double half hitch, and just make sure when you tighten this, the bead stays in that corner and gets trapped in place. So the other half to make it a full double half hitch. Then I go with this working cord underneath the next holding cord in, start the double half hitch, so make the first half, and straight away bring it back underneath the same cord, so basically swapping hands, to then make the other half but in the opposite direction. Like that, and that's how we're starting out the curve, underneath the outer holding cord again, to on this outer one make a full double half hitch. Like that. Tighten that. So that's basically half of the curve now. So I'm going to swap direction, bring it back underneath the same holding cord, make another full double half hitch here on the outer one to now make the other half of the curve. Like that, underneath the inner holding cord to start the double half hitch. making the first half, and then straight away bring it underneath to make the other half in the opposite direction. Like that, underneath the outer holding cord, and make a full double half hitch. And you can already tell that we're now getting a curve just like we did previously. So this is the full curve that is now also perfectly positioned to work with the cords from that previous crossover section to create the next crossover section on this left side. And of course, we need to do the same thing on the other side here. So separate out all your cords, and then of course moving on to the right here and do the same. Like I said, doesn't matter at all what side you start on because we need to do them both anyway. So I'm just going to show you again. It is the exact same technique like I said and you've seen previously, but obviously because it's the other side, it is a mirrored image, so it can be a little bit confusing. So first of all, the very outer cord I've just separated out so I can put on a bead, obviously if you want to. Find that very tiny hole in the tiny bead and then let it drop all the way down till it literally won't go any further, just like the other side. And then we can start making the curve. The cord with the bead on, the very outer one, underneath the middle one of the three. Do a full double half hitch. Just like that. Underneath the next holding cord to start off the double half hitch. And remember, straight away bring it back underneath the same holding cord. And make the other half of the double half hitch in the opposite direction. Bring it underneath the outer holding cord to make a full one. Just like this. Straight underneath the same holding cord to basically repeat what we just did, because this is half of the curve. A full one around the outer one, and then around the inner one we do the double half hitch, but with the change of direction within the knot. Like that, underneath the outer one to do a full one again. So we have the full curve complete. Tighten that double half hitch, and there we go. We now have the curve on the right side as well. Now for the next level down, again, we're now basically repeating over and over again, but I'm just going to show you just to make sure I remember all the things that are most important. Now again, I like to kind of start from the middle. It's just personal preference, just kind of so the middle is done, and then I work my way towards the sides. So I want to separate the cords out so I have those 4 middle cords to begin with available. So 2 from the left and 2 from the right that are then ready to cross over and create the very middle crossover point, which is also the one that I mentioned we need to be most aware of in the sense of how they need to cross over and under. So here, the way to tell is literally just looking at the previous one. So the previous middle one, the left crossed over the right, So that means here I want the right to cross over the left, which means the right cords need to be the holding cords. So I grab the very inner two, very middle two, just separate out my long cords here, and then make sure that the right one is over the left one, so like that. And then I can start making my double half hitches, because then straight away you'll be able to tell that I'm extending this or these rows coming from the right, which is opposite of what we had on the previous middle crossover point. So just making sure to alternate like that every time we're in the middle, which is how we're going to achieve that fishtail braid effect. Double half hitch with both of them. Now extending the other row as well, so bring that cord over so we can use these two as our working cords. Double half hitch with the first one and a double half hitch with the second one. And then obviously what you can always do, and I kind of do recommend doing, is just once you've made it, double check that it is correct, because if it happens to be you've done a mistake, rather find out now and you can undo it before you either get too far and it's a lot to undo, or you kind of finish and you realize once you've done it all. And don't forget, while we're here we might as well extend the rows so we don't have to keep flopping back and forth too much. So separate out the very next cord next to these that we can then use as the working cord to simply extend the rows by one double half hitch on each. First half, tighten that, and then the other half. That's the left side, do the right side, pick out the cord I need to use, making sure I grab the right one. It is this one here. Separate it out and then use it to extend the rows. And you can really start to tell the effect now more and more. Obviously the more work we do, the more the pattern shows up. First double half hitch and the second one. And you can really start to kind of see now as well the repeating pattern that we have to do, where we do 3 connection points, then 2, then 3, then 2, and then obviously the curves on the side as well. So I'm moving from the middle one, again to either side, it doesn't matter. I just have a tendency to kind of naturally go to my left first. So separate the cords out. We have our cords in place. So of the 6 on this left side here, the 4 middle ones are what we're going to use to make the connection point. And as you can tell, they're already in position from the previous rows that we've made. Again, just making sure we're doing it correctly. We need, because this is on the left side of the middle, the left needs to be going over the right, obviously how it appears. So that means the 2 inner cords here, very middle ones of these 6, I'm going to take the left one, cross that over the right one. So we're getting the rows basically from the curve to continue. So that's the first one. Grab the next cord, working cord, make your double half hitch, Of course, just do the row below it as well. Your double half hitches. Just like this. We now have this connection point in place. And this is where personally I like to then extend the rows just like we've done. Oh, I think I just missed the second half. There we go. So I'm taking the very furthest right chord of these 6 that we're working with and just extending. So again, these rows are in position for the next connection point there, crossover point. Which will attach to the middle one that we've already done. And my personal preference, I'm just going to leave extending the rows on the outside until I come back and need to make the full curve. So from this I'm swapping to the right side. Again, can just use these 2 pins, help keep the cords more nicely out of the way. Grab all the right ones here. So we can just do this connection point. So we have these 6 cords. You can see the 4 middle ones, 2 from one side, 2 from the other, are crossing over naturally. So I want to grab the very 2 middle ones, and we're on the right side of the middle, so that means the right cord needs to cross over the left one. And then do that double half hitch. Nice and tight. Do the next one. To extend that row, and then the next holding cord, bring that over so we can continue that row as well alongside it. The first one and the second one. So there we go. And while I'm here, I'm going to extend the rows. So taking the furthest left cord of these 6 ones that I'm working with and just extend these 2 rows in the exact same way as all the other times. First one and the second one. There we go. So that is now ready, and just like before, like I mentioned, to extend on the other side here, that is going to be the curve, so I'm just going to hold off with that until I get to the point where I kind of obviously need the curve to be able to bring down when I need to make those connection points. So that is literally the pattern for this fishtail braid macrame bracelet that we now need to keep repeating the steps that I've already showed you. So I've just done the level, you could say, where I have 3 crossover points. Next I need to do level with 2 crossover points. I've already showed you how to do that. And don't forget, when we get to the point we need to do the curves, that if you want to add beads in, remember to add your bead before you start using that cord to make knots with, so the bead gets trapped right in that outside corner. So this pattern is basically built up of all these different connection points, and the most important thing to create the pattern and get obviously this fishtail effect is making sure the directions are correct. So obviously, especially here in the middle, where you want to alternate between whether the left or the right goes over or under, and otherwise just remember that midpoint, and whatever's on the left goes over, and whatever's on the right goes over. And just make sure to keep that in mind throughout as we keep repeating this, obviously for the length that you need. So now I made it all the way to the other end here. Then what we have left to do is basically finish off this end the same way that we started out. So where I've ended up is basically I've done the 3 crossover sections there, and I've made sure they end kind of in a straight line across because we've got to make these straight rows of knots just to finish it off in the same way. And so we have that spacing to attach our ribbon ends. So to do those straight rows, I'm just going to take my furthest left cord there. Doesn't matter if you do that or the furthest right one. I'm going to bring it over the top of all the other ones towards the right. So from the left towards the right. And then I'm just going to go in and take one cord at a time. So grabbing the very next one that's coming underneath, make a double half hitch. And then as I'm tightening this, I'm just making sure to hold that holding cord in a straight line. So you can see it goes right underneath all the ends of the rows of knots. And one more for the double half hitch. Grab the very next cord and repeat. And basically just go like this using one cord at a time all the way across to the other side. And of course we then want to do a few rows. I personally like to do the same amount of rows as the other end, so we want to go across, then back, and then a third one as well to get the same amount as the other end. So I now made my rows of knots here and I've removed it from the board. So all we're going to do now is basically finish off the ends. So I want to get rid of the excess cord. I'm just going to take my scissors and then I'm going to go in and cut off the excess, but I'm going to make sure to leave just about 1 millimeter or 2. So I'm not cutting right up to where the row is because it will probably start to come undone, but just leave tiny little tails. And that end one as well. So something a bit like that. What I'm then going to do to seal the ends in place here is get my lighter and singe them down. So basically melt these little ends of the cord. Now obviously be careful because it is a naked flame and it does get hot. But you can do that if you're using a synthetic cord like this. So just gently melt down the ends. And I also kind of like to flatten it down. Just using a lighter. Or if you don't want to use a lighter, or if you're using a natural cord, you can just add a bit of glue right where the knots are and then cut off the excess once it's dried. So do this obviously all the way along and on both ends. So now the ends are ready here to then put our ribbon ends onto. It's going to sit like this. We then have that loop that we can attach our findings with. Now of course these will clamp down over the end, but what I also personally like to do is add some glue for extra security. So I'm going to be using my E6000 here, and I just like to apply this with a toothpick. So I get a little bit onto the toothpick here, and then I just want to add it inside of the ribbon end, kind of covering the sides of the walls, you could say. Add a little bit more. Now we don't need to add too much, so we don't need to fill it up or anything, because when we then clamp it down over the end of the bracelet, it's just going to come spilling out. But I just want to make sure I've coated the sides basically. And then if I have anything left on the toothpick, I like to just put it onto the end of the bracelet itself, just to make sure to kind of get it in between the knots if I can. So something a bit like that. And then just going to put this glue away. I'm then going to take the ribbon end with the glue inside, place it over the end there, and then I need to take a pair of flat nose pliers to then kind of clamp this down. Now I like to then hold the bracelet in my hand and put a finger on either side to kind of steady it in place as I'm clamping it down. And I like to go into a place and start clamping it, but not all the way down straight away. I like to do it a bit at a time, going from one side to the other until it's almost all the way down, because it might still be able to move, Before I clamp it all the way, in case it kind of slipped a little bit while I'm doing it, I can just move it into position. So make sure obviously it's sitting straight on the end. And then I go in and do my final squeeze, nice and tight, all the way to the ends there. And I also like to just close up the ends from the sides like this. And there we go. That is now attached, and we then have the glue inside, which when that dries is going to add a lot of extra security. So it's not just the ribbon end itself. Of course, repeat on the other end as well. We have then this loop where we can just attach the clasp and the findings that we want to use. So once the glue is dried and you've added your findings, your bracelet is ready to wear. And we've achieved this intricate looking fishtail braid effect, but completely made with macrame. So if you like this bracelet, I have loads of other tutorials on micro macrame on my channel, so feel free to check that out. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.